Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Yeah, greetings, folks, and welcome. It's great to have you. Here we are, kicking off a brand new week of broadcast excellence right here at the EIB network. I'm Rush Limbaugh, the self-named Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. Great to have you here. Telephone number is 800-282-2882. And if you want to send an email, it's lrushbo@eibnet.com. I am just amazed at so much. I hardly know where to start. I'm driving into work, and I'm listening to a couple guys talk about, for the first time, I'm really worried about the world my kids are growing up in. You know what? I'm really worried. I'm really worried that up till now everything's been peachy keen. I'm really worried that the world my parents or kids are growing up to is not going to be the world that I grew up into. I said, guys, you're about 7 years too late. Now, they were talking about ISIS, but the disconnect, the drive-by media today, you know what their big narrative is? You know what the big narrative in the drive-by media is today? What impact will what happened in Paris have on Obama's refugee program? I kid you not. That refugee program needs to be shut down right now because we have proven to ourselves over and over again that nowhere in the world can we vet these people. One of these terrorists in Paris was a Syrian refugee, or at least was carrying a passport to so indicate. One of the mothers, or a mother of one, or the mother, I don't think there's two, the mother of one of the terrorists said, no, he was just under stress. That suicide vest he was wearing, he's just under a lot of stress. I said, okay, what university in America did he attend then? What's he stressed out about? All of the excuses that are being made. Obama's press conference today in Turkey was, Michael Goodwin had a piece yesterday in New York Post said it's time for Obama to quit. Just quit or lead, get out of the way. Andrea Pizer, New York Post, much the same thing. Ted Cruz has said much the same thing. It's just, I guess, I'm sad that it's an event like this that is waking people up, but even this event is not waking some up. There are American campus kids out there tweeting that this is all our fault. And make no mistake, Obama, before all this is over, and what this press conference today was about was laying the groundwork for blaming George W. Bush for all this. I mean, it's a Democrats' go-to. It's an election year and an election season, and if Obama can get away with it, he's going to lay all this off on Bush by saying we wouldn't even be there if Bush hadn't taken us there. There wouldn't be an ISIL. There wouldn't be an ISIS if it weren't for Bush. This is what he's setting up. But more than anything, I know this sounds, well, it might sound snarky. I don't intend it to, folks, and I'm probably echoing the sentiments of quite a few of you, but I'm really appalled that there are so many people surprised that something like this could happen. What do you mean something like this could happen? Something like this happens every day in the world. To one degree or another, ISIS is out murdering people. Boko Haram is out kidnapping and murdering people. What is it? The fact that it happened in Paris is what has people all bent out of shape and shocked and unbelieving. Why is it, and why has it been so difficult to accept this enemy? Well, one of the reasons is that the leadership of the United States will not even identify this enemy. And believe me, that matters when we're talking about the low information crowd. When the President of the United States refuses to use the word terrorism, Islamic terrorism, Muslim extremists, anything of the sort that accurately describe who these people are, believe me, the reverence and respect for the office of the presidency is such that a lot of people, low information people, aren't going to get it. They're never going to hear it. And now the drive-by media narrative here on how the Paris attacks might affect Syrian refugees. I mean, it's all over the place. Yeah, like we can't fall into ISIS trap and close the door to refugees. That will just make Muslims mad. We have to prove to the Muslims that we continue to care despite what happened in Paris. The EU needs to let in even more Muslim refugees, Syrian refugees, and of course, Among them are more Muslim terrorists. And then the same argument's being made here about the United States. And everybody wonders why Donald Trump's at 42%. Donald Trump's out there saying we need to kick their ass. We need to blow up their oil fields. We need to take them out. And I want you to listen to a soundbite here, synthesize all of this, because everybody's wondering. Obama had a press conference today, and everybody's wondering what he said. What in the world did he say? It's not what he said. It's what he would not say. He would not condemn this. Reporter after reporter after reporter, sycophant after sycophant after sycophant stood up and gave Obama a clear path to just come down on these people. One reporter even stood up the third time the question was asked, because the first two questions Obama punted. He just will not provide the answer that everybody wants or even expects. That's even more to the point. So the third reporter stands up and says, Mr. President, I know what you've said prior, but let me just cut to the chase. When are we going to find these bastards and kill them? And Obama got mad. I've already answered that question 2 or 3 times. I don't know what more I can say about it, but if you want me to answer it, I'll go ahead. And then he doesn't answer it. He keeps talking about the strategy that we've got. And he keeps talking about, despite what you saw in Paris, progress is being made. I mean, totally tone deaf. And this goes along with the... Was it karma or what that on Friday Obama says, we got them contained, man. We got ISIL. We got ISIL contained. The JV team, we got them contained. And then what happened Friday night happened. And the White House is still trying to tell, oh, yeah, we know exactly what we're doing. We got them contained. Retired military people are all over television unbelievingly. Well, they are being open in their disgust and their opposition and the fact that they're totally stymied by what Obama's doing. The still active duty. Remember, we got 2 kinds of generals there in the Pentagon. We got warrior generals and we've got politically correct generals. And the politically correct faction is alive and well and maybe even running the show. But about 10 minutes after 11 this morning, Waleed Phares was on Fox News. And Waleed Phares is the National Defense University professor. And he is a longtime commentator and analyst on issues in the Middle East. And John Scott, the co-host at Fox News, said, Waleed, why can't we take these people out? We know where they are. We've got people willing, if we would just arm the Kurds, we've got people willing to take them out. If you want to know from an expert analyst why Obama is hemming and hawing, if you want to know, and it's going to infuriate you, if you want to know this man's opinion why Obama is punting, stalling, obfuscating, dancing around the answers to questions, here is what Mr. Phares said in response to the question, Waleed, why can't we take them out?
Actually, we can, and actually we should, but the president has a different strategy. He's getting a lot of pressure by the Iranians. Otherwise, he should have long time ago allied himself, partnered with Arab moderate forces such as Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, UAE. They are fighting terrorism very much and very well in Yemen, in Sinai, in Libya, elsewhere. But the reason that he's not going to these moderate Arab forces and asking them on the ground to be boots on the ground is because the Iranians are pressuring him, because the Syrian regime is pressuring him. They don't want those areas, those Sunni areas, to be liberated by Sunni moderates because they won't have access to them. That's the bottom line of it.
Did you get that? I had to listen to it a couple of times because I didn't have closed captioning, so I've got the transcript here. Basically, and it makes perfect sense when you know this, and if you accept this, the reason why Obama's tap dancing and him hawing around and not answering the question is because he doesn't dare. The reason we don't take ISIS out is because the Iranians don't want him taken out. The reason we don't take ISIS out is because the Syrian regime doesn't want him taken out. Now, okay, well, why do we care what the Iranians do? You tell me. Well, yeah, obviously to preserve the deal, but the nuke deal, but it goes deeper than that. It has to do. This is kind of convoluted. I'm going to do my best here at trying to explain this because it's really, really convoluted because Obama thinks in convoluted ways. But first, let me read Ferris's answer here again because it went by pretty quickly. Obama is getting his strategy in fighting ISIS is due to the pressure he's getting by the Iranians. He should have long ago allied himself with Arab moderate force. Now, that's kind of a curveball because there's nothing moderate about the Saudis, particularly in terms of militant Islam. However, in what he's talking about here is that the Saudis don't like ISIS any more than we do, and they don't like the Iranians. And so, therefore, the Saudis are aligned with the Jordanians, and the Saudis are aligned with Egypt, and the Saudis are aligned with Dubai and Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, and they are moderates. I mean, they're building Las Vegas in the Middle East. They are the UAE. That's what Dubai and minus the alcohol, except in the hotels. That's what they are. And those nations are indeed fighting ISIS, and they are fighting Al-Qaeda for their own reasons. But nevertheless, we do have a common enemy. But Obama's not aligning with the Saudis. He's not allying with Jordan or Egypt or the UAE. He is aligning himself with Iran. The reason that he's not going to these moderate Arab nations, Saudis, Jordanians, Egyptians, UAE, and asking them to contribute boots on the ground along with us is because the Iranians are pressuring him, because the Syrian regime is pressuring him. Iran and Syria do not want moderate Sunni area like Mosul and other places. They do not want these Sunni areas to be liberated by Sunni moderates, because then the Iranians won't control them. The Iranians won't have access to them. The bottom line is, according to Walid Ferris, is that Obama is choosing side. The Iranians want to run the Middle East for all intents and purposes, and the Syrians and that alliance, and that's the alliance he's thrown down with. Now, it's up to us to go figure out why the Iranian nuke deal. I think with Obama, you can't take the politics out of anything. And a lot of this has to do. Obama gave an answer, and I spent all morning trying to find. I read it yesterday. I didn't make note of it. I didn't save it. I don't remember where, and I don't remember the name of the writer, and so I didn't find it. Thought I knew where it was. I spent a half hour looking for it. So much for the magic of search. But it was a story about how Obama has said recently that wherever there is sectarian violence, we aren't going to get involved. We're not going to touch ground. We're not going to go on the ground. We're not going to have boots on the ground. We're not going to contribute. We're not going to donate. We're not going to do one thing in any Middle Eastern area where there is sectarian violence going on, because Obama says no matter. If we beat back one group, we don't know who's going to replace them. That's one of the strategies, by the way, that Ferris mentions here that's not in the bite. Says Obama is worried about taking out ISIS because he doesn't know what's going to replace them. At least ISIS is known. I mean, this is one of the opinions that Ferris mentioned, so we don't have it in the bite. And Cookie, don't go get it. It's not necessary. I just mentioned it. But the sectarian violence aspect of this all relates to being able to blame all this on George W. Bush. Sectarian violence defined as Sunni versus Shiite, for example. And in any Middle Eastern country where there is sectarian violence, in other words, where there isn't unity of Islam or anything else, we're not going to get involved. And we're not going to get involved even if what is happening in these places leads to terrorism against Americans or against the United States. We're not going to get involved until those nations, countries, areas figure out and sort out their own differences. And those differences exist because Bush went to Iraq. The sectarian violence that exists over there is because Bush went to Iraq and invaded Iraq. And if that hadn't happened, none of this would have happened. And that's what they're trying to lay the groundwork for making a case of at the White House. That's what all of this hem-hawing around is about, in my humble opinion, because anything in the Middle East, particularly coming up on an election year, is always going to be Bush's fault. So Obama is playing patty cake with the media today, not answering avoiding looking like an incompetent boob in the process. But believe me, there is a strategy behind this. And the strategy is to protect the Democrat Party and his legacy and his look, Obama is responsible for ISIS. We had a safe and secure Iraq that we would not maintain. Obama cleared out, pulled everybody out, told them they're on their own because the Democrat base, lunatic base, demanded it. But at this point, it's kind of moot to get involved in the blame game because the reality of dealing with these people is paramount. And that's where Obama is failing. Big time. And this is not, when I said I hope Obama fails, but he hasn't, he's been immediately and immensely successful. This is a genuine failure. This is a failure of American leadership. We do not have to be the world's cop. We don't have to have boots on the ground anywhere to provide moral leadership. We are not providing any. Obama doesn't think we're qualified. Obama doesn't think we have the character. We haven't earned it. We have always inserted ourselves in this region of the world. We've inserted ourselves everywhere around the world. We've never had the right to do it. And we're not going to resume doing it now. We're going to get out. The Democrat debate on Saturday, what a joke. The lowest rated Democrat debate, and the Democrat National Committee is getting a lot of grief now from the candidate. What are you putting us on Saturday night when nobody's watching? At DNC, Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz said, be thankful nobody saw it. You people are a bunch of idiots. Anyway, we got to take a break here. You're darn right I'm going to get to the Democrat debate today. Absolutely. In fact, Judicial Watch has just today released 35 pages of emails from Huma Abedin. And they reveal that Huma advised Hillary aide and frequent companion Monica Hanley that it was very important to go over phone calls with Clinton because the former Secretary of State was often confused. This is an series of emails in a document dump that Judicial Watch got, 35 pages, emails from Huma warning State Department staffer that Hillary is often confused. So make sure you go over with her on the phone, whatever it is you are emailing her. All that coming up, plus a review of the Democrat debate. But look, folks, back to Waleed Farris's answer here on Fox about why we're playing patty cake with ISIS. And it is a stark contrast. While Obama was doing this really, I don't know, it was a wimpish, how to describe this press conference he did today. At the same time, Francois Hollande, president of France, was over at his Congress practically asking for a declaration of war against ISIS and laying out in no certain terms how they're going to take them out. I mean, it was a juxtaposition I never thought I would see. Here we have the Surrender Caucus in France manning up, and the United States trading places and becoming, if not the Surrender Caucus, the ho-hum caucus. So what we've learned here from Waleed Farris and his analyst credentials to me are top-notch. Shia Iran wants the Sunni regions of the Middle East destabilized. Therefore, they want ISIS to continue to operate. ISIS destabilizes. That will ultimately help Iran take over the entire region in the future. Obama gave Iran money by lifting the sanctions. He's given them permission for nukes, which is a giant threat leverage that Iran's going to have. So it seems that Obama has chosen Shia Iran to be the dominant force in the Middle East. That's what Waleed Farris essentially is saying the strategy is. So Hillary Clinton says, and I can't wait till the millennials find this out. Hillary Clinton said that she defined smart power. Remember this? It was a speech that she gave at Georgetown University, foreign policy speech and press conference. The event was half empty. This is back in, December, almost a year ago, December 5th of 2014. And she shows up at Georgetown, foreign policy press conference, and nobody's there. The room is half full. And I remember commenting at the time, she can't sell a book. She can't draw people to a book signing. My constant refrain, why are people afraid of her? What in the world? And I think the reason people are afraid of her is because they know the Clintons are a corrupt bunch of people that will engage in any activity that you can't. It's not a fair fight. I understand it. Plus, there's a D by her name. But anyway, here's what she said at this foreign policy press conference. And I just want to remind you of this in light of what happened this past weekend. Hillary said, "This is what we call smart power, using every possible tool and partner to advance peace and security, leaving no one on the sidelines, showing respect even for one's enemies, trying to understand, and insofar as psychologically possible, empathize with the perspective and point of view of our enemies." That's a year ago. That's Hillary Clinton. I can't wait. I hope somebody makes an ad out of that before the week is over and keeps running it all the way up to the presidential campaign. Smart power, showing respect for one's enemies. And none other than that great foreign policy expert, Madonna, is out basically echoing this. Madonna says, we must love these people. We must show them the love. We must teach them Vogue. We must do everything we can to show them how much we care for them, and that will disarm them. They think we hate them. They think that we despise them. If we show them that we mean them no harm, they will drop every bit of this. There are people that believe this. You would not believe, and I'm going to share it with you before the program's over, you would not believe some of the stuff being stated by this same group of college nuts, these propagandized kids. We must understand these people are just seeking their own place in the world. It's not for us to blame them, blah, blah, blah. Bernie Sanders at the Democrat debate actually said that all of this is happening because of climate change. Now, I know climate change, what's that have to do? Well, climate change is the reason for all the migration, you see. See, it's getting really hot in the desert. It's getting really hot where these people live, and they're moving to Northern Europe to cool off. They're going to Germany and Sweden and the Scandinavian countries and Greece over. They're going there to cool off because it's so hot where they live. And he says this as though he genuinely believes it, and I think he probably does. He does believe it. We're dealing with Fruit Loops here. And they're led by a guy, Barack Hussein O., who just is an unmitigated disaster. And whatever you think of his intellect and so forth, he is incapable of leading. He's incapable of identifying the problem. And that's being generous. If it's something else, if it really is, if Waleed Farris is right, I want you to listen to this answer again. Waleed Farris on Fox News an hour and a half ago, he was asked the question everybody's asking, but everybody was intensely asking it after this embarrassment of an Obama press conference this morning. Waleed Farris says, why can't we take him out? That was the question he's asked. Why can't we take him out? Why don't we take him out? What in the world? Why doesn't Obama even act like they're the enemy?
Actually, we can, and actually we should, but the president has a different strategy. He's getting a lot of pressure by the Iranians. Otherwise, he should have long time ago allied himself, partnered with Arab moderate forces such as Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, UAE. They are fighting terrorism very much and very well in Yemen, in Sinai, in Libya, elsewhere. But the reason that he's not going to these moderate Arab forces and asking them on the ground to be boots on the ground is because the Iranians are pressuring him, because the Syrian regime is pressuring him. They don't want those areas, those Sunni areas, to be liberated by Sunni moderates because they won't have access to them. That's the bottom line of it.
It's incredible if that's true. That what Iran wants in the Middle East is what Obama is interested in. But when you look at recent events, it makes perfect sense. Shia Iran wants the Sunni regions of the Middle East destabilized. Always at war, always in chaos. Kind of like Obama wants Middle America always at war and in a state of chaos and unrest. Now, who can keep the Middle East destabilized? ISIS. Who is destabilizing the Middle East? ISIS. Who's not really taking any action to stop ISIS? The United States. Who is the leader of such action in the world were it to happen? The United States. There's no leadership. We are not at all serious. It's obvious. We are not at all serious about dealing with ISIS. And now, according to Walid Faris, we know why. ISIS continues to destabilize the Sunni regions of the Middle East. That ultimately helps Iran take over the entire region in the future. We have an alliance out there we're refusing to join of the Saudis, the Jordanians, Egyptians, and the United Arab Emirates who are fighting terrorism, including ISIS, all over the region. And if you look at actual events on the ground, Obama secured, with Republican help, the Corker bill in the Senate, lifting sanctions against Iran. $150 billion frozen that Iran is now going to get. They are also going to build nuclear weapons. They have been granted permission to build nuclear weapons by virtue of our nuke deal with them. So they get $150 billion of their assets frozen because we secure the lifting of sanctions. And they can never be slapped back on. Like, there's some Republican candidates, hey, go ahead. And if Iran violates, we slap the sanctions back on. We can't. We would have to go back and rewrite new legislation that Obama would have to sign. We can't just slap sanctions back on, folks. They have been permanently lifted. That equals $150 billion. You add that, the Iranians have permission to go ahead with their nuclear weapons program. And it appears that Obama has chosen Shia Iran to be the dominant force in a region of Sunni and Shia Muslims. That appears to be the arrangement, if Walid Faris is right. And if there's anybody who would know, it would be him. And if nothing else makes any sense, nothing else makes any common sense. Innocent civilians are being killed all over the world. Christians are being chased out of their homes and killed all over the world. People are being beheaded by ISIS, and Obama twiddles his thumbs and basically says, well, we got a strategy to deal with it. They're the JV team. We're actually containing them. We're doing a good job of containing them. Really, why would Obama be sympathetic to the Iranians? Why can't he say militant Islamic terrorists? Why can't he can't even provide people validation for what they're already thinking about ISIS. He will not even strongly condemn ISIS. It's just breathtaking to behold. And as evidenced by what I heard earlier today, a bunch of sad sack people who think Obama's great because he's a liberal Democrat. Actually, they don't think Obama's great. They just hate Republicans. They think Republicans, whatever, and conservatives or whatever. So he's cool and he's hip, and the Republicans are a bunch of whatever. Obama's destroying the healthcare system. He's destroying the United States economy. He's transforming this country, and these guys today say, oh, yeah, well, you know what, this ISIS stuff going on in Paris, I'm the first time I'm worried about the future. My kids are growing up in this. So where have you clowns been? You should have been alarmed about all this long before Friday. But, if that's what it takes to wake people up, then fine. We'll deal with it as we get it. Another time out. We'll get back to your phones in a moment. You know what else is being highlighted here in this incident? And it's been happening a lot. And that is all of this symbolism. People engaging in all of this symbolism and acting like it matters. I remember Boko Haram, when they first kidnapped the, whatever it was, 250 girls in Nigeria. And Michelle Obama went out and said, I ask you to join me in our new campaign, Save Our Girls. A Twitter hashtag, Save Our Girls. And, of course, I mocked it. I did. I made fun of it. What good's that going to do? It isn't going to bring anybody back. It's not going to do it. There's not one step, not one half step. There's not one bit of action attached to a hashtag on anything. There's not one bit of action on a ribbon that you put on your shirt or jacket that says you care. And what good is all this symbolism if there's any action behind it? This is the same criticism that I have leveled at many in my own movement. Conservative opinion leaders, conservative writers, and so on write this great conservative stuff, but that's it. They don't engage in the battle. They don't attempt to persuade minds. They just write and they're done with it. Yeah, it's written very well, and it really reads well, and wow, it's really powerful. But what are you doing beyond that? Well, that's it. I write my column and I'm finished. No. And I remember being raked over the coals by late-night comedians after I poked fun at Michelle Obama's Save Our Girls or Bring Back Our Girls or whatever it was. The question was asked on late-night TV, has Rush Limbaugh no soul? No soul. What good did that hashtag do? There's all kinds of candlelight vigils and people leaving flowers here and there, and it's all personal. But it's become, in its own way, its own cult. It's a way people involve themselves in a story. You know when I first ran into this and actually identified what it was? During the death or after the death of Princess Diana. All the people on the parade route and all the people depositing flowers. And it was George Will on TV who said, you know, these are just people that want to be in the story. And it was a really pithy comment, forerunner comment to social media. People inserting themselves in the story, feeling like they were part of it. People feeling like they were part of the TV. Look, there's my bouquet. I put that bouquet there. See that? As the funeral procession goes by. But it didn't matter to anything. It may make the person engaging in the symbolism feel better. But what does that accomplish? Are you against people feeling good? Are you against people participating? They're not participating. That's my whole point. There isn't any participation here. We have runaway, murderous terror, and all of this symbolism in the world saying you're a good person isn't going to stop any of it. If symbolism's all it took, what kind of symbols could have beaten the Germans at Normandy? It's absurd. And I can hear some of you. Why are you being so mean? These are just people that care. They just want to show their support. I know they just want to show their support. That's all fine and dandy. But I think it's worse because I think people think they're actually mattering. And it becomes a substitute for action. And action is what's necessary in something like this. All the outpourings of sympathy and so forth. There's a bunch of pieces have been written about this as well, too, about how it better lead to action if it's going to mean anything. Symbolism is part of political correctness. Symbolism and its faux involvement. I think it's all part of, frankly, the American college experience. It's like political correctness in a way. And by the way, another one of these student leaders has been exposed as a total 100% liar. The young woman that went on Cavuto's show the other day. Keely Mullen or something. We've got the audio soundbite coming up. Just like this Jonathan Butler kid at the University of Missouri totally made. She comes from a multimillionaire father background. It's stunning, the level of dishonesty and the deceit, coupled with all of this political correctness, which leads people to think they're actually accomplishing something when they aren't. It's bad education. Grab a quick phone call. Robert, Bowling Green, Kentucky. I'm glad you called, sir. Welcome to the EIB Network as you're up first today. Hello.
Well, thank you, Rush. Privileged to speak to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that.
Appreciate what you do. Thank you for specifically putting blame where blame belongs on the situation in the Middle East as our President Obama left Iraq and he received a victorious situation, abandoned it, and now we have a mess. And I hear George Bush blamed all the time. We've had that for 7 years. He had victory. My son was a part of that victory. So it's particularly personal when I hear this happen and blame. My son made it back fine. there were a lot that didn't. And so it's not a moot point. It's still a very sensitive point. But this guy, we did free Iraq, by the way. It was a successful mission. And then this guy dropped the ball.
Well, they were having free elections. It was a stable place, and Obama refused to keep a certain number of U.S. troops there to maintain what we had won under a bogus interpretation of the Iraqi Status of Forces Agreement. And Obama claimed, I'm not leaving our troops there. I'm not leaving our troops there when they can be tried by some international court for war crimes. And it was all made up. The Iraqis were not insisting on being able to try American troops at an international tribunal. Obama just wanted out of there. He ran for the presidency on the basis that the whole war was corrupt and that Bush was corrupt, and it was a stupid thing to do. We get out of there. He had to get out of it, just like he has to close Gitmo. The same difference, to appease this base. Not only that, he really believes it too. But I'm just telling you, they're setting up that press conference today, and everything Obama has said since Friday has been because it's a presidential election year coming up. And all of this, mark my words, in specific, they're planning how to blame all of this on George W. Bush. I mean, that's go-to. That turns out Democrat voters. That ramps up the base. Make no mistake, but this, ISIS, and all of this is because Obama abandoned the region when he took off. No, I do. We got some audio soundbites of the Obama press conference today. You need to hear, if you missed it, the attitude the president conveyed in this thing. It was worse than detached. It was arrogance. United States, if you were looking for the president of the United States to say, we are not going to tolerate this kind of behavior. If you were looking for the president of the United States to say that we are going to go to the end of the earth to find these people and take them out and do everything we can to wipe out the kind of terrorism taking place, this was not the speech for you. If you were looking for the president of the United States to provide the world confidence and leadership that ISIS and other groups like it could be dealt with and taken out, this was not the speech for you, because none of that was said. There wasn't even an attitude that conveyed those thoughts. And as I said, at the same time, Obama was... You know the only time Obama came alive during his speech today? Did you watch any of it? The only time he came alive, the only time Obama got passionate was when what? When he started talking about the migrants. When he started talking about the migrants and how we must keep our doors open. And he started condemning people who think we need to keep Syrian refugees out of here. We need to keep Muslim refugees out of here. We only should let in Christians. He blew up. He got passionate. He took out after Republicans, Republican presidential candidates. He was tougher and more critical on Republicans than he was on ISIS in this speech. But it was clear. Folks, does anybody doubt that we're in a war, that we've been in a war since before 9/11? We have been in a war with the Islamists. Hell, you could think that's the Thomas Jefferson days. But in the modern era, the first World Trade Center bombing in 1993, we have been at war. There have been repeated terrorism attacks, hijackings, you name it. We have been at war. And way too many administrations have sought to ignore it and look the other way and downplay it, including the Clinton administration, including the Obama regime. You name it, look the other way. It isn't happening because in no way, shape, manner, or form were they prepared to take any of the responsibility of dealing with it, much less acknowledge they had anything to do with it. Clinton had everything to do with it by making us look like a phony paper tiger, by cutting and running out of Somalia, Black Hawk Down incident. There's any number of historical events I could give you, but the fact of the matter is that we have made it clear we can be had. And after 9/11, what did we do? From the highest levels of the State Department, we started conducting seminars asking, what's wrong with us? What did we do? Why did we make them so mad? What have we done to so infuriate them? We took it all on ourselves. It was our fault. College kids today have picked up that refrain in the terms of political correctness. It must be something we've done to offend them. We've got to find out what it is and assure them we mean them no harm. But if you were looking for tough leadership, if you were looking for a president, make it clear that he's going to defend his country and other Western civilization countries, Western democracies, if you were hoping you were going to get a president who was looking the world in the eye and saying that they were not going to be able to continue with this was not the speech for you because you didn't get that. What you got from this president was you're a bigot if you think we should stop helping these refugees. He wants 100,000 a year. And I'll guarantee you this too. Whether Congress defunds the whole program, don't bet on that. He's going to do it anyway. Folks, this last year coming up, I'm telling you, I don't think people still have any idea what's going to go on. 1 year to go. 1 year to fully transform this country. 1 year to do whatever he has in mind vis-a-vis the United States of America. 1 year. If he wants to keep those borders open and he wants, southern border immigration is a much different thing than taking in these refugees. Don't equate the two. They're two separate entities. They've got different objectives. Illegal immigration is one thing. We already have a set of laws on the books. All we'd have to do is enforce them, but nobody wants to. We're not doing so. But the southern border immigration problem is not at all similar to what Obama's doing with this expanded refugee importation program. But you will hear he just comes alive when admonishing the bigots in this country. And he even went so far as to say, you got people who think it's okay to let in the Christians, but they don't want the Muslims. Well, that's not who we are. That's not American value. That's not the America I know. That's not the values that we have. And it blows his stack practically. I want to give you the audio soundbite before we get to Obama. I mentioned this, and I want you to hear it. It's Hillary Clinton, December 3rd, 2014, Georgetown University. Foreign Policy Press Conference. This is the place only barely half full. And this is what Hillary said. A portion of her remarks is how she defines smart power and what it would be, how she would use it were she president.
This is what we call smart power, using every possible tool and partner to advance peace and security, leaving no one on the sidelines, showing respect even for one's enemies, trying to understand and, insofar as psychologically possible, empathize with their perspective and point of view, helping to define the problems, determine the solutions. That is what we believe in the 21st century will change the prospects for peace.
That's Hillary Clinton almost a year ago explaining smart power. Every possible tool to advance peace and security. Of course, none of this applies when talking about Republicans or conservatives. As far as they are concerned, we will not be interested in their perspective or their point of view. And we will not help to understand and define their problems and look for solutions. No, we're only talking about Islamists here. That's essentially what she's saying. Now to the Obama sound bites from his speech today. Right off the bat, this is Obama and his coming alive. This is the most energetic and passionate he was during the whole thing, by saying rejecting refugees. This is after what happened in Paris. Rejecting refugees would be a betrayal of our values.
As we accept more refugees, including Syrians, we do so only after subjecting them to rigorous screening and security checks. We also have to remember that many of these refugees are the victims of terrorism themselves. That's what they're fleeing. Slamming the door in their faces would be a betrayal of our values.
Right. Now, this is a theme, by the way, that's being picked up by the international left. And I've seen it in a number of leftist websites, publications, and that is, come on! The refugees are not the terrorists. The refugees are fleeing what happened in Paris. They're not the people causing it, when we have discovered that one of the terrorists in Paris on Friday night was indeed carrying a Syrian passport. Now, we think that's the case. It could have been one of the victims. It could have been a forged passport or what have you. But nevertheless, it was found. But the bottom line is, with all of this happening, with all of these young men, able-bodied, military age, fleeing, Bernie Sanders says because it's hot where they live because of climate change. Obama says, oh, yeah, we'll check them out. Really? Who has confidence that we're going to do that? We can't even find the illegals in this country, supposedly. What do you mean we're going to check them out? How many Fort Hoods is it going to take? How many one-off terrorism acts, attempted terrorism acts by lone wolves or whatever in this country is it going to take? Why in the world would you want to commit suicide? This is what people don't understand. You know, reasonable people who are not politically, shall I say, they don't define themselves politically. These are the people I'm talking about I wish we could teach to spot liberalism everywhere it is. We would be so far ahead of the game. But people that don't want to think they're watching politics, don't want to see politics, don't want to think politics is part of anything, even they are beginning to say, wait a minute, we just had another ISIS attack. They're beheading people left and right. They're making videos of it. They're killing people left and right. People are fleeing everywhere. We want to let people into this country during a period of time like this. Why would we commit suicide? Why would America take the risk? Even non-political people are beginning to ask the question. Like what I heard today, driving into work. You know, I'm really worried out there, Mark. I'm really, really worried. It might be the worst time in the world for my kids to be growing up. You know, I'm flabbergasted listening to this. It's talking about the Paris attack. And they're worried. They were talking about sleeper cells here and how many might be planning attacks here in the United States. Now, have you guys noticed what's happening to the economy? Have you guys noticed? They hadn't. It's asking empty questions. That's what I mean. Fort Hood was not workplace violence. Well, I know they said it was. That's why people don't trust them now. They're asking us to not believe exactly what we see. They're asking us to deny common sense. They're asking us to deny what's rational. They want us to believe them. It's workplace violence. Really? Allahu Akbar, workplace violence. Yeah, it happens every day. Snerdley shouts it every other day this last week. Snerdley, Allahu Akbar. Got mad at his computer. Yep, it's happened. It's common. Right, workplace violence. Okay, so there's Obama making the case. He's in Turkey. We can't shut down the refugees. We got to let them in. That's who we are. That's how we open them up. And this is when Obama's critics are bellicose. And they pop off with tough talk. This is Obama tougher on Republicans than he ever is on ISIS. This is a press conference at the G20 summit. And White House correspondent Jim Avila. Mr. President, if I could ask, I'd like you to address your critics who say your reluctance to enter another Middle East war and your preference of diplomacy over using the military makes the U.S. weaker and emboldens our enemies.
Some of them seem to think that if I were just more bellicose in expressing what we're doing, that would make a difference, because that seems to be the only thing that they're doing, is talking as if they're tough. Folks want to pop off and have opinions about what they think they would do, present a specific plan. What I'm not interested in doing is posing or pursuing some notion of American leadership or America winning or whatever other slogans they come up with that has no relationship to what is actually going to work to protect the American people and to protect people in the region.
Did I just hear what I just heard? Did we all just hear that? Did he just say that He's not going to pursue some notion. He's not interested in pursuing some notion of American leadership or of America winning or whatever other slogans they come up with. It has no relationship to what's actually going to work. If America winning doesn't have any relationship to what's going to work, then what the hell are we working on? What's the point? This is not the first time he has said this. This is not the first time he has questioned the whole concept of America winning as a phony premise. Gosh, I wish I could remember. It seems like it was early on in the first term. It might have been about Iraq. But there's something about, this is the second, maybe the third time I have heard Obama denigrate the concept of America winning as somehow insignificant or beneath us intellectually, that it's just a slogan. America winning is just a slogan. And what I guess is real is all these hashtags. Bring back our girls. Let's drop some candles here for the victims of whatever happened and think we're doing something. That's what people on his side do. But he really makes the case here, makes the point here that this is bitter clinger rabble rousing. It's just insignificant. This idea of America winning, it's so backwards. We intellectuals are so far beyond that. The concept of America winning, that's not what this is about. We're not in this to win. That's not why we're doing what we're doing. That's his point of view here. American leadership, American winning, other slogans we can come up with. I'm not interested in that. That has no relationship to what's actually going to work to protect the American people. America winning has no relationship to protecting the American people. This is arrogant condescension. And the whole idea here about winning and victory in intellectuals, in their world, that's blue-collar stuff. That's hayseed hick stuff, talking about winning and this and that. The intellectuals know there is no winning. There's just containment. There's appeasement. There's cooperation. There's coalition. Winning? Come on. Don't waste my time. We're so beyond winning. In his vaunted world of superior intelligence and being, winning is such a passé thing. Leadership is so irrelevant to the real world today. But he wasn't finished. He then lectured everybody on how we have to accept Muslims as well as Christians, or we're all just a bunch of bigots.
When I hear folks say that, well, maybe we should just admit the Christians but not the Muslims, when I hear political leaders suggesting that there would be a religious test for which person who's fleeing from a war-torn country is admitted, when some of those folks themselves come from families who benefited from protection when they were fleeing political persecution, that's shameful. That's not American. It's not who we are. We don't have religious tests to our compassion.
Oh, really? You know, it's a common line that Obama uses all the time to make everybody think he's an American traditionalist. Now, whatever he is, he's not an American traditionalist. By that I mean traditional American values. He abhors them. They're out of date. They were never that good anyway. But when he comes out, that's not America. That's not who we are. That's Obama trying to make you think that he thinks like you do. But he doesn't, folks. By the way, can anybody tell me who is it? He says political leaders suggesting that there should be a religious test for these refugees. We should admit the Christians, not the Muslims. Who said that? Do you know anybody who said it? Well, I can't think of anybody who has. And then he says some of these folks themselves come from families who benefited from protection when they were fleeing political persecution. Who's he talking about? You know, I wish he would name names when he starts alleging all of these bigots are out there. I want to know who he's talking about. But I'll guarantee you this, the low information crowd in the Democrat Party thinks he's talking about Republicans. And that's the whole purpose of the comment. But he won't name names, all these imaginary bigots out there. That's not American. That's not who we are. Really? We aren't who we are the last 7 years, if you ask me. We are not who we are. We've been doing things not the way we normally do them the last 7 years, if you ask me. Here's Bill in Phelan, California, as we head back to the phones. Great to have you, sir. Hi.
Yeah, good afternoon, Rush. It's a pleasure to talk to you again.
You bet.
This touches exactly on 2 points that you made in the last hour and what you're talking about right now. Number one, where have these people been before last Friday? Number two, people wanting to insert themselves into the story. Friday, I was surfing around the television dials, and I happened onto my local Fox station in Los Angeles, and Shepard Smith was giving commentary while the hostages were still being held in the theater and there were still bombs going off in the theater. He actually said that this is an unprecedented event since World War II, and he says this is not just a case of some people hijacking some planes and flying them into buildings. This is an unprecedented choreographed attack of 7 locations in Paris. And I'm sitting there, my jaw dropped, Rush, and I'm going, what the hell was 911? They've even got the press conditioned with this Obama administration that 911 was maybe our fault or it's something to be played down. And what was happening in Paris was the most horrible thing since World War II, since 1944. I was absolutely flabbergasted. And his delivery was amateurish. It was more like an actor trying to do it for a bad movie where something like that is happening. And they had him as a talking head in the corner of the screen while they were given the live feed. Therefore, he was inserting himself from a remote
Hang
location.
on a minute. I've got to take a break here, Bill, and we've got the break coming up here, and there's one other thing you wanted to address, so we'll do that when we get back. Okay, I have been informed that Obama was probably referring to Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, and Ted Cruz because apparently Jeb Bush and Cruz suggested that Muslim refugees from Syria not be admitted to the U.S. right now, refugees. And Rubio has said that we shouldn't take in any Syrian refugees. And, well, that's fine. I don't mind missing that. I must have missed that Friday night. I was just missed some things Friday night. No big deal. Fact of the matter is that Obama, that's what jazzed him. Obama got more irritated at those guys than he is at ISIS. Now, before you people go off half-cocked out there, I'm just telling you that's how he sounded. In this press conference today, Obama got animated, he got passionate, energetic when talking about that. When talking about ISIS, it was, what's the word for it? It was impersonal, it was detached. It was as though he was talking theory and philosophy in the faculty lounge. He wasn't talking about specifics, and there was no condemnation to speak of ISIS. There was an acknowledgement that they're bad guys, but there was no condemnation. Not like there was condemnation of these Republicans who think it would be wise to keep Syrian refugees out of America right now. What do you think, folks? Given what's happening, given what we see happening in Europe, Europe is being overrun. And there are a lot of people in Europe who are starting to wake up to the idea that this is not just a natural flow of people fleeing poverty or war or global warming heat or whatever, that it is part of a plan. People in Europe, because it's so massive, because of the demands these refugees are making, because of the demographics of the refugees, even some wuss Europeans are beginning to get suspicious. To me, this is just a common sense. We are at war. We have a terror group which is much more violent than Al-Qaeda, which we seem totally vexed by. If you listen to our own president, we're vexed about how to deal with them. They were the JV team. Then last Friday, we had them contained. Obama even today said that despite this incident, they're on the run. Did you hear him say, those are not his exact words, but despite this incident that happened, we still have the upper hand with these people. And we don't. But you couple what's happening at the southern border with endless illegal immigration sponsored by the Democrat Party. Well, can't leave the Republicans out of that one either. This country's being flooded and overrun. And forget the religion, forget terror. How about the U.S. economy? How much does our compassion cost? We are $19 trillion in debt. We don't have the money for all of this compassion. You know, that's the thing that nobody is talking about here, except on our side. We continue to import all these people wherever they come from, the southern border or war-torn refugees from wherever in the Middle East. They're incapable of providing for themselves. We're settling them and locating them. And by the way, Syrian refugees are already here in overwhelming numbers, and they're in practically every major city in the country. I have a graphic that I printed that I could show you on the DittoCam. I'm not sure how well it would show up, though. It's whoever put the graphic together used very light shades of, I would say ink. Let me show it to you. I'm going to turn the DittoCam off here, what I just did, and I'm going to zoom in here so that when I show it to you. Let me test the zoom here. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, what you're going to see when I turn the DittoCam back on is where Syrian refugees were placed. What you're not going to be able to see probably is the outline of the United States. The continental 48, it's very, very faint here. So imagine that you are looking at the continental United States with New York in the northeast in the upper right-hand corner, and L.A. in the lower left-hand corner, and Florida, Miami in the lower right-hand corner, and Seattle upper left. And you will see this is where Syrian refugees have been placed. The size of the circle matters. The bigger the circle, the more refugees. And in every major city here, folks, L.A., San Diego, San Francisco, Oakland, Seattle, New York, Washington, Miami, Tampa, Jacksonville, Atlanta, St. Louis, Louisville, Memphis, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth. Here, let me show it to you here. And there you go. That's where Syrian refugees already have been placed in the country. Now, we'll grab a screenshot of this and put it up on the DittoCam, and I'll send the graphic up to Coco so we can get a clean version of this up on the website so that you can see it. DittoCam coming off now. I'll have to reposition it. But given what we know, just with the common sense aspect of this, and what we see happening in Europe, and the demands being made, and the events taking place, is it common sense? What about the American value of self-preservation? What about the Constitution? What about the oath of office, defend and protect the people of the United States? The president wants to provide all kinds of leadership in terms of our welfare state, but he does not want to provide leadership in vanquishing our enemies. So it seems to me, if you want to come here and become a freeloader for the Democrat Party, the doors are open. Wherever you are in the world, and the more dependent you are, the less capable of providing for yourself, the better. But when it comes to leadership around the world, vanquishing enemies of free people, United States doesn't seem to be eager to get on that battlefield. The United States doesn't seem to think that it's our responsibility anymore, even to ourselves, much less our allies. Now, Bill from Phelan, California, dropped off. Oh, you do have him back. Okay, Bill's back. Is he ready to go now? All right, here we go. Bill, you're welcome back. There you go. Okay, Bill, you're back. Now, you mentioned there were two things I talked about in the previous hour. You addressed the first one. I've forgotten the second one that you said you wanted to address.
The second one, Rush, was people trying to insert themselves into the story, and this includes the journalists that are remotely located from the actual event, but they try and stick themselves there like they're actually there reporting on it.
Exactly.
And this is what Shepard Smith was doing. Just before the break, I was starting to say that they had Shepard inserted in a very large picture up in the corner of the screen as a talking head while the events were still going on in Paris, in the theater when you hear the bombs going off and the shooting and everything. And he's there with a very, very stern look on his face, doing performance art, basically. You could tell that the performance was phony, it was stilted, he was making more of an effort to see that he's going to get his journalism Emmy or his press club award or something than to actually report the events.
Well, repeat to me what Shepard said, what you heard Shepard say, that this was not just a bunch of guys flying airplanes into buildings.
Okay, I'll try and repeat it the way he did it, too. He was very melodramatic, and he says, ladies and gentlemen, this is an unprecedented event. Nothing like this has happened in the history of the world in Paris, not since World War II. Ladies and gentlemen, let me make it clear that this is not just a matter of some guys hijacking some planes and flying them into a building. This is an unprecedented, choreographed, orchestrated event. 7 locations we're hearing reports of so far. And he went into this big, to do about the whole thing.
And could it be that Shepard was talking about France? That this was nothing like this has been seen in France since World War II?
Oh, yeah, he was talking about France, but what I mean, Rush, is he was totally upplaying the importance of France and totally downplaying what happened in 9/11, almost like we deserved it or that it's such past history right now. It's nothing anymore. It's just a bunch of guys that hijacked some planes and flew them into some buildings, he said, or words to that effect.
Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to downplay 9/11 while talking about what happened in Paris?
Well, it's simple. I got the distinct impression, number one, he was trying to get some sort of an award. He was more concerned with inserting himself into the story, and maybe he wasn't as involved back then when it happened. He was involved now. This was his moment now. And the other thing was... Oh,
you mean like 9/11 wasn't a big deal because he wasn't there to cover it?
Yeah, well, he might have been there, but maybe he was a younger journalist and didn't have as much involvement back then.
Oh, wow. Well, that's... Bill, in all fairness here, you're interpreting a lot there. From old Shep's attitude and so forth. I would have to see this, and I'm not to doubt you, Bill, but it's awfully strange to just regard 9/11. It's not just a bunch of guys flying jets at a building. That was one thing. This is terrorism. Nah, it's not. I would have to see that. That was a tough one to. A tough one to believe. I mean, even if the late Peter Jennings were doing it, that would be a tough one to believe. Now, but Shepard Smith did say, I did read this earlier, that Shepard Smith did say that because of the Paris attacks, the world had changed forever. The world had changed forever. Now, let's assume he means that. So I think it's interesting exercise to try to find out how people think. How do you take 9/11, 3,000 people dead, in a unique attack? Our own airplanes were hijacked and used against us. We taught the hijackers how to do that in our own flight schools. We had the proper intel, but we were not able to use it because of a wall that the Clinton administration had built, and so the CIA, the FBI could not share intelligence data. 3,000 people dead, our own airplanes. How do you relegate that to a ho-hummer and then say that 129 people dead in Paris changes the world forever? I mean, I think Hitler changed the world forever. World War II changed the world forever. And had we lost World War II, I don't even want to contemplate. But I think that is modern-day newscast 101. I mean, just when there's no breaking news, you run a crawl that says breaking news. When there's nothing new the last 20 minutes, you put up alert. Everything's breaking, everything's now, everything's immediate, everything's a crisis. Nothing happened moments ago until what we got to tell you now just happened, even though you heard it 2 days ago. There's obviously some broadcast technique in this. But if he really meant it, if what happened in Paris means the world changed forever. Hey, folks, I have to tell you, these two clowns that I heard, it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter, just average, ordinary guys. These two clowns, all of a sudden, after everything, what happened in Paris makes them worried for their kids' future. Not 9/11. They didn't say 9/11 did. They didn't say any of the domestic things here. What happened in Paris, they finally realized the world is a different place now. That kind of thinking fascinates, because those people vote, they elect Democrats. The reason all of this is happening, or so much of it is happening, is because we've got Democrats who are incompetent, who have a different view of American leadership, running the show for the last 7 years. All of this stuff does matter, not to mention the domestic disasters that have been brought upon us. Your guiding light. Times of trouble, confusion, murkiness, tumult, chaos. Mother of Paris suicide bomber says her son did not mean to kill anyone. She claims he may have blown himself up because of stress. Name is Ibrahim Abdeslam. Blew himself up in the attack outside the cafe. He was one of 3 brothers, said to be at the heart of the ISIS terror cell. The family has since claimed that Ibrahim, 31, may have been stressed. Stressed? What U.S. college did he attend? Well, keep telling us that they're stressed out on campus, that they're worried, that they're feeling unsafe, and so forth. I'm just asking. Obama advisor, President Obama still plans to allow 10,000 Syrian refugees into the country over the next year, despite the terrorist attacks in Paris. This is Ben Rhodes, the Deputy National Security Advisor. Yeah, we had very robust vetting procedures for those refugees. That's a blatant lie, by the way. Peter King, Congressman Peter King of New York, rebuffed the regime's claim that there are robust vetting procedures in place. He was on Fox News Sunday. He said, I was listening to Ben Rhodes, and what he just said about this robust vetting of refugees is untrue. There's virtually no vetting. There aren't any databases in Syria. There are no government records. We don't know who these people are. And that makes all the sense in the world. What are we vetting them against? Okay, here is Amir Sahib Skyhook. He wants into the country. Wait a minute, Amir. We're going to check you out. Well, very good. You check me out, but there are no records of me anyway. I come from Syria. Everything has been blown up. There is no government building there. There were no records of me. And he's probably right. Where do we go to find out who Amir Sahib Skyhook is? Why am I in trouble? I just did an impersonation, for crying out. What am I in trouble for? Amir Sahib Skyhook? Oh, come on. That's just a takeoff on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Anyway, here's Ted Cruz. This is Ted Cruz. We got the audio sound bites. Fox News set. What, you really think I'm in trouble over that? Come, a little bit over what? The name or the impersonation? I'm not mocking anything. I'm just illustrating the point. Peter King says there aren't any records in Syria of who these migrants are, these vagrants are. The refugees are. How can we vet them? Is there a hall of records in Damascus? And is there a record there for Amir Sahib Skyhook? Or pick whoever you want, so that we can verify who he is based on what he's telling us. That's all Peter King's point is. Anyway, here's Cruz for Saturday, Fox and Friends.
I recognize that Barack Obama does not wish to defend this country.
Nope. Wrong soundbite. We got to take a break. We're out of time for this segment. It was only 13. It was number 28. We'll get to it when we come back. Don't go away. Okay, other things going on out there. There's still some crazy stuff going on the campuses out there, and a Democrat debate Saturday night. And some of the candidates are getting ticked off at Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz are putting them on Saturday night at a record low audience for a debate. 8.5 million people. They ought to be thankful that nobody saw that debate. They ought to be thanking Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz, and they ought to be asking for midnight Saturday night the next time. You know, people ask me all the time a lot of things because I'm one of the world's foremost experts. Rush, why is Trump at 42? Why does Trump keep going up? Let me ask you a question to explain that. Can you name for me any Republicans besides Trump who are out slamming the policies of this administration? I'm talking about in this specific instance. Trump is out there saying, we got to get ISIS, we got to find them, take them out, and I'll do it. I'm the guy that said take out the oil fields because that's where they're getting their money and so forth. And this is not to disparage, look, I'm not trying to disparage Cruz or Rubio or any of these people, but in the old days, it wouldn't have taken this long for the whole Republican Party to have speaker after speaker after speaker out there condemning just Obama's speech today. I wouldn't be a lone voice ripping into this Obama speech, is the point. Now, the only thing that's happening in that regard is the following. During that speech, Obama said, we got all kinds of ways to vet these Syrian refugees. It's not a problem. And his deputy national security guy, Ben Rhodes, oh, yeah, not a problem. We can vet these Syrian refugees. It's not a problem whatsoever. Well, Peter King of Long Island says, no, we don't have a database to compare. Michael McCall, who is Homeland Security Committee in the House, has just sent Obama a letter. Said, look, we've talked to people at the FBI. We've talked to people at Homeland Security. We've talked to experts in military. We do not have. Nobody has been able to tell me what process we have because there isn't one to vet any of these refugees. So Michael McCall and Peter King are two people, and that's good. I'll tell you, this Obama speech today, folks, was a disaster. It was, I don't know, it's frightening in certain ways. I mean, to realize that we don't have anybody anywhere near finger on the button, much less somebody that we're afraid is going to hit it. So we're going to have continued importation of refugees while we're being told that we've got the best vetting procedures in the sun, and we don't have any. But anyway, I've got the sound bites coming up, Trump condemning Obama and the regime, and there's nobody doing it quite the way. Carly Fiorina had, I think, a Twitter post or something, maybe a Facebook post, I'm not sure which. Let's stick with the audio sound bites here as a means of expressing and explaining all this. Here's Ted Cruz Saturday on Fox and Friends. And, you know, Obama today in his speech responded to people, he didn't name them. People he thought were just terrible, saying we should let the Christians in, but not the Muslims. It's just terrible. It's terrible. And that's not who we are. That's not America. That's not the way our compassion is not defined by religion. Some such thing as that. I think he was responding to Cruz and Rubio and maybe even Jeb. Here's what Cruz said.
On the other hand, Christians who are being targeted for genocide, for persecution, Christians who are being beheaded or crucified, we should be providing safe haven to them. But President Obama refuses to do that.
Yeah, that's what set him off. That's no doubt what set off Obama. There isn't much simpatico expressed for these beleaguered Christians, is there? From this regime? There isn't. You hardly hear any mention of it whatsoever. So Cruz talks about it in the context of who we're letting in refugee status-wise, and Obama blows a gasket. Now, just so we can hear what the caller was talking about, we went back and got Shep Smith from Friday night Fox News, breaking news coverage of the ISIS attack on Paris. So our caller from Phelan, California, told us that Shep said that 9/11, a bunch of guys hijacking planes and flying them to buildings, that's one thing. But what happened in Paris? That changed the world. That's what he said to us, right? Well, here's what we have Shep Smith saying during Fox News Breaking News Friday night.
We know at this moment that the world as we know it has changed tonight. For terrorists from far away did not cross an ocean with planes that they hijacked and have a one-time experience that changed everything we know. In this case, there is a series of coordinated attacks that happened and continues to happen. And actions unprecedented in modern history are taking place in Paris tonight.
Okay, so I see what the caller means. Actions unprecedented in modern history are taking place in Paris tonight. So 9/11 was, it was big. You had some guys far across an ocean, hijacked planes, a one-time experience that changed everything we know. In this case, a series of coordinated attacks. Wasn't 9/11 a series of coordinated attacks? Weren't there 4? And one was thwarted, but yet the passengers died. A one-time experience that changed everything, 9/11. But this case, series of coordinated attacks that happened and continue to happen, and actions unprecedented in modern history are taking place in Paris tonight. I don't know, folks. I as I say, I'm fascinated by the way people think. Can somebody tell me, and I honestly don't know, because I haven't read anything about it. Has the United States let in any Christians from the Middle East as refugees? I mean, maybe by accident or whatever, but clearly the focus is on Muslim refugees, Syrian and otherwise. Yeah, I don't either. I have not seen stories that we've allowed Christians from Iraq in. Now, last month, James Comey, head of the FBI, said there was no way on earth to vet all the Syrian refugees. So it's not just Peter King of Long Island, and it's not just Michael McCall of Texas. I have James Comey. The FBI told Congress last month, quote, "We can only query against that which we've collected. And so if someone has never made a ripple in the pond in Syria in a way that would get their identity or their interest reflected in our database, we can query our database till the cows come home, but there'll be nothing show up because we have no record of them." And this buttresses what Peter King was saying. Peter King says there's no records of these people in Syria. And we don't have any record of them. If we don't have a record of them, then how in the world are we going to vet them? And yet, here's Ben Rhodes as we now hit audio soundbite number 5. This is Obama's deputy national security advisor. And it's on Fox News Sunday. Chris Wallace says one of the attackers in the French slaughter was carrying a Syrian passport that seemed to indicate that he had been a refugee that had come into Europe along with the flood of migrants in October. Given that, Mr. Rhodes, is President Obama reconsidering his plan to accept 10,000 Syrian refugees over the next year?
No, Chris, we're still planning to take in Syrian refugees. We have very robust vetting procedures for those refugees. It involves our intelligence community, our National Counterterrorism Center, extensive interviews, vetting them against all the available information.
How old is this guy? That sounded like a student from Mizzou. No, Chris, we're still planning to take in Syrian refugees. We have very robust... Well, play it again. I don't need in person to play it again. Sam, hit it.
No, Chris, we're still planning to take in Syrian refugees. We have very robust vetting procedures for those refugees. It involves our intelligence community, our National Counterterrorism Center, extensive interviews, vetting them against all the available information.
But there isn't any available information. That's what James Comey is saying. If we don't have them in the database, and we won't if they haven't done anything criminal, then there's no way we can vet them. And as I said, the Syrian Hall of Records in Damascus, if it existed, we don't have access to it. But if they haven't made any ripples, then the Syrian regime isn't going to know anything about them. And if the Syrian regime is exporting them to conduct acts of terror, there isn't going to be anything on them. And yet here's Ben Rhodes. Oh, yeah. Dude, why, hell yeah. We have extensive interviews. We're vetting them against all information. Hell yes. By the way, that 10,000 figure is wrong. Obama wants 100,000 Syrian refugees alone every year. The Daily Mail, the UK Daily Mail, one of the best newspapers in the world, has a story today reminding their readers of their reporter who was able to buy a fake Syrian passport that looks totally legit. This is why really intelligent, responsible people are worried that Obama's totally outclassed here. Or something. The idea that we've got this vetting procedure and that ISIS is contained, and that even after this event, we got them on the run. You know what Obama's big excuse in his press conference today was? His big excuse was, well, you know, it's really, really hard. It's hard to go after people who aren't afraid of dying. If he said that once, he must have said it 5 times. And what that was an excuse for not going and getting them. Hey, they don't care if we kill them, so it's not a big deal. I mean, it's really tough to go after people who aren't afraid to die. What does that mean? Is he talking about the suicide bombers? They're just the pawns in all this. They're expecting the 73 virgins. Hey, no, I'd better not. That might be going too far. On second thought, I have a legitimate question about the virgins. Well, no, I do. I do. I really do. Well, we've heard that one of the Paris terrorists is a woman, right? Have you heard that? Well, do you know what the question is? I'm wondering what awaits them. I think it's a legitimate question. Just asking. Ted Cruz, back to Cruz on Fox News Saturday, or Fox and Friends weekend on Saturday morning. John Scott said Barack Obama won the presidency in part by recognizing that Americans were tired of war. If you do succeed in winning the office, Cruz, does it mean application of military force toward ISIS?
I recognize that Barack Obama does not wish to defend this country. He may have been tired of war, but our enemies are not tired of killing us, and they're getting stronger. Every region on earth has gotten worse under the Obama-Clinton foreign policy. We need a commander-in-chief who says we will defeat radical Islamic terrorism.
Well, we don't have it. But, you know, this John Scott's question here, I think there's probably some truth to it. He said Obama won the presidency in part by recognizing Americans were tired of war. That's not what Americans are tired of. Whether the American people knew it or not, they were tired of the daily, unending series of news stories about how we were losing. That's what they got tired of. Remember, the Democrat Party, which is the media, was doing everything they could to saddle the Bush administration with defeat in Iraq. Everything. Condemning every strategy, including the surge, before it happened. Running stories about how everybody involved was lying. Cheney, Rumsfeld, Bush, Scooter, Libby, I mean, you name it. Petraeus. They were doing everything they could. Harry Reid's on TV. This war is lost. This war was lost a long time ago. It was a successful anti-war campaign run by the Democrat Party and their agents in the media. I mean, how many times do you want to read in the news that American military troops and Marines are terrorizing women and children in Fallujah? How many times? And then when that report hits, you've got John Murtha and John Kerry standing up condemning the Marines. That's what the American people got tired. The American people don't get tired of waging a war to defend the United States and its allies and winning. The news media tired people out on the war. The news media people. And on this, I have to say the Bush administration didn't do its job in making its own case. That criticism was allowed to stand because the Bush administration said that they weren't going to get down in the mud with political critics because it was beneath the dignity of the office of the presidency. So they allowed public opinion to be bent and shaped and flaked and formed by all this negative campaigning that the Democrat Party and the media was doing. But I resent this assertion that the American people elected Obama because they're tired of war. They're tired of losing. They thought we were losing in Iraq. They thought we were losing big time. And they didn't understand what the point was. If we're going to continue to throw assets and resources at it and lose, why do it? Which is a commonsensical reaction. Ted Cruz, Obama does not want to defend the country. Taking in refugees is lunacy. I'm telling you, people that talk like this, you're going to see their poll numbers skyrocket. Let me take a break. We'll come back with more Cruz and a couple of Donald Trump, Rubio in on this and explain why. You're just going to see, especially if Trump zeroes in on terrorism, to go along with his stance here on illegal immigration and drops some of these personal attacks on people like Carson and so forth, his 42% could become 50 before long. Ted Cruz, back to Fox and News, Fox and Friends Weekend on Saturday. Tucker Carlson was sitting in as a co-host, said to Cruz, what do you think of the regime's policy of paying for Syrian refugees to come here in large numbers? Should they be halted?
President Obama and Hillary Clinton's idea that we should bring tens of thousands of Syrian Muslim refugees to America is nothing less than lunacy. One estimate was that 77% of those refugees were young men. The Director of National Intelligence here in America has said of those refugees in Europe, it is clear that a significant number of them may well be ISIS terrorists. It makes no sense whatsoever for us to be bringing in refugees who our intelligence cannot determine if they are terrorists here to kill us or not. Those who are fleeing persecution should be resettled in the Middle East and majority Muslim countries.
Donald Trump during a campaign event Saturday in Beaumont, Texas.
What's going on is terrible. And when you look at what happened in that case, it was just reported, one from Syria. Our president wants to take in 250,000 from Syria. I mean, think of it, 250,000 people. And we all have heart, and we all want people taken care of and all of that. But with the problems our country has to take in 250,000 people, some of whom are going to have problems, big problems, is just insane. We have to be insane.
Yeah, well.
Terrible.
Yeah, Obama's not insane, though. And that's the thing. That's what's scary about this. Insanity. We can explain it. We can understand. This is not insanity. This is purposeful. Trump, by the way, also has an answer for any of you scared of a possible terrorist threat from ISIS, frightened by the attacks in Paris. He says, shut down the mosques. He said, I would hate to do it, but it's something you're going to have to strongly consider. You're going to have to watch and study the mosques because a lot of talking is going on at the mosques. That 42% just became 45%. I don't care what you think. There's nobody else saying that. And people take this stuff far more seriously than establishment politicians seem to think, particularly more seriously than Obama does. I can't tell you the number of times. I know personal friends of the FBI who have, privately, they worry sick over what's happening. Those are religious institutions, therefore religious freedom. They worry sick about what's going on in there. Only because of world events, not because of prejudice. More Trump at the Beaumont, Texas campaign event.
When you look at Paris, the toughest gun laws in the world, Paris, you can say what you want, but if they had guns, if our people had guns, if they were allowed to carry, it would have been a much, much different situation.
I don't know. It was a concert. It was a musical. It was a nightclub. Young people just out for a Friday night. That's who were targeted. Anyway, we'll be back. Here is Eric in Wilmington, Delaware. You're next, sir. It's great to have you on the EIB network. Hi.
Hi, Rush. Yeah, I'm just going to make a point. What we need is a Churchill, not a Chamberlain. But unlike Chamberlain, who was misguided and thought Britain was a justified country, we have Obama, who thinks we're an unjust country, and he's trying to undo all the things he thinks we've done in the past, the last 60 years, by supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, trying to get Egypt overthrown, supporting the Iranians, and so forth and so on. And you don't hear a speech like Chamberlain, the blood, sweat, and tears speech, saying that we'll fight them on the beaches, in the air, and nothing less than victory. And we just missed that today because we have a president that thinks we're an unjust country.
That's exactly right. I think that is as well stated, next to what I've said, of course, as I've ever heard anybody say it. And factually, everything that Eric says there is right. If you wanted a fire and brimstone, if you just wanted some confidence so we can beat this guy's back, if you wanted some confidence that the U.S. is not going to permit this, you did not get it today. You didn't get anywhere near it. You didn't get close to it. You got appeasement, you got accommodation, you got intellectual warnings that kind of thinking, America winning and victory, those are so antiquated and they don't mean it. They're just slogans. By the way, I remembered the first time I heard Obama say that, and it was about Afghanistan when he was talking about extending our stay in Afghanistan in 2009. That is when Obama said that we were saddled or some such thing with this concept of victory, that was setting us back. It was a distraction. He didn't like all this talk of winning. I knew he had said it before. I knew I'd heard it before. And today he said this whole notion of America winning, victory, and so forth. It's just sloganeering. It doesn't mean anything, and it's not helpful. Now stop and think of that. Can you imagine any wartime leader worth his salt, not even just saying it, thinking it? There is no Churchill in the Democrat Party, and that's who's running this country. There is no Churchill. And the caller's point, at least Chamberlain, he was a bumbling fool, but he had the best of intentions. We can't even assign the best intentions to our current leadership because you look at what he's done. The Arab Spring was indeed an attempt to get the Muslim Brotherhood running the show. It turned out that it bombed out. But you look at who we're allying with. Go back and grab soundbite number 1 from today. This is the first soundbite of the day. And if you're just joining us or if you missed the first soundbite, you got to hear this. Walid Faris, who is a Middle East analyst, he was on Fox today, and he answered the question, why don't we do anything about these guys? Why aren't we doing anything about ISIS? That's the question, particularly after Obama's speech today. There was nothing in his speech today that gave anybody any confidence whatsoever that he even cares to do anything about ISIS. He was basically saying there's not much we can do. We got them on the run anyway. We haven't contained. He said that last Thursday. He said, but there's not much you can do with people who are willing to die. And so everybody said, well, what's the strategy then? And Walid Faris had the answer.
Actually, we can, and actually we should, but the president has a different strategy. He's getting a lot of pressure by the Iranians. Otherwise, he should have long time ago allied himself, partnered with Arab moderate forces such as Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, UAE. They are fighting terrorism very much and very well in Yemen, in Sinai, in Libya, elsewhere. But the reason that he's not going to these moderate Arab forces and asking them on the ground to be boots on the ground is because the Iranians are pressuring him, because the Syrian regime is pressuring him. They don't want those areas, those Sunni areas, to be liberated by Sunni moderates because they won't have access to them. That's the bottom line of it.
What he's saying here, and I think it makes perfect sense, he's saying where there is sectarian violence, you've got Sunnis and Shias. And as long as those battles are going on in either any countries that we're involved with in the Middle East, we're not going to get involved. Sunni and Shia, civil war, sectarian violence, we don't know what we're going to get replaced, even if we take one side out. In this case, if we take out ISIS, we don't know what we're going to get. We don't know who's going to step up and replace them. What an attitude. What about nobody? What about when you vanquish them? What about when you defeat them? They think, no, there's always going to be some terrorist Muslim faction or sectarian unit that'll stand up. Maybe so, but you deal with that one too when it happens. But the real news in his answer was that it's the Iranians who want a Middle East they can control. And it is with the Iranians that Obama is sympathetic. And the Syrians. So Waleed Faris is on Fox today saying if you want to know why Obama gave this speech today, and if you want to know why Obama has no interest in wiping out ISIS, it's because Iranians love ISIS. ISIS is keeping the entire region destabilized. And the Iranians want it destabilized so they can control it. And if you say, well, that doesn't make any sense, it doesn't. Obama just lifted sanctions on the Iranians, so they have $150 billion to go fund terrorism or buy replacement airliners for their faltering national airline. We just gave them the green light to go ahead with their nuclear weapons program. You think they are not going to run the Middle East once they have the leverage of a nuclear weapon to threaten people with? That's who Obama has sided with. Now, he doesn't explain why. He just explains that it's Syria and the Iranians with whom Obama has decided to sidle up. We can fill in the blanks on that. So our caller correctly lays out the fact that, well, look, we've got a president who thinks America is unjust, who thinks America is responsible for the mess in the Middle East, because unsaid, by the way, our allied status with Israel. And we made the mess, and it's our fault. America is unjust and immoral, and we don't have the leadership morality here in order to tell the rest of the world how to live and what to do or defend freedom, which is not our job anymore. It's not our role. We're not qualified. It's all part of cutting the U.S. down to size, punishing us for all these transgressions that we have committed around the world since our founding. And it does appear that this is the mindset of this regime. It's the mindset of every community organizer out there, every left-wing radical in this country. The United States is to blame for practically everything that has gone wrong domestically and internationally. Little did people know they were electing one of those guys back in 2008. Back in a sec, folks, at the time. You know, here's the thing about this Obama press conference today. He really is saying there's nothing we can do. He says, and he said, I haven't heard any better option. Can you imagine Ronald Reagan? Can you imagine Churchill? Can you imagine Margaret Thatcher saying, I haven't heard any better options? I haven't heard anybody else better idea. I mean, I'm willing to listen to any idea we got out there. Those are from Republicans, of course, because they're crazy. But other than that, I haven't heard any ideas. You got any better options? I'm not going to put boots on the ground because that means you're going to stay there forever. So what are you going to do? There's another way. He basically said, and he was bragging about it, no plans to change his strategy because there isn't anything we can do. That's what he was saying. That's why people are so shocked. There isn't anything we can do. And I think he really thinks it. Well, coupled with there isn't really anything he wants to do. And at the Democrat debate, climate change was a bigger... They didn't even want to talk about this at the Democrat debate. They got mad when the moderator brought this. That debate was so boring and so nothing, it ended 7 minutes early because they all ran out of things to say. And you didn't know that? They had a small 7 minutes early because they ran out of things and there was nothing left. They didn't want to talk about foreign policy much. To the extent that it came up, Bernie Sanders' climate change is the reason all this terrorism is happening because the terrorists are too hot where they live because of climate. They're moving to cooler places, which is Northern Europe, Scandinavia, Germany. He meant it. And now they're complaining at W. Blabbermouth Schultz because the audience was so tiny, 8.5 million people on a Saturday night. They should be lucky that few people saw this. But they're mad. They're mad that there's only 2 or 3 debates, that they're on Saturday night when nobody's going to see them. What they're really mad about, they think they're going to win simply because they've succeeded in driving up opposition and hatred for Republicans. They really don't think they have to go out and win anything. Don't doubt. I'm talking about the Democrats. They think they're going to win by default. because they have so poisoned the minds of Americans about Republicans, I guarantee you. That's it, folks. Sadly, we are out of busy broadcast time for today. Off to a rousing start for yet another great busy broadcast week. And we'll be back here and see you tomorrow, revved and ready. Thanks always for being with us. See you tomorrow.